Hello everybody, how's everyone doing? Nothing like a good war again, right? Or a continuation of a war to get us jumping out of bed at 5 or 4 in the morning. Let me know in the comments where you guys are watching from, where you're tuning in from, and we'll get right into it. I mean, just, you know, you can tell already from the title what it's about. Just, I'm trying to pace myself. Save the fire for the segment. Oh my god, it's just I mean, I knew they were going to do it. I told you that, right? Like, this is the easiest I told you so in the world. I told you they were going to jump in, but anyway, I don't want to say it, but I said it. Okay, so we've got people tuning in. We've got thousands of people watching right now, and by the way, I'm just going to warn you in advance, we're having connection issues. That's why we took a bit longer to get started, but don't worry, because I'm going to be uploading everything afterwards. We've got people tuning in from Canada, people tuning in from California, from Japan, from New Orleans, from Thailand, from Vancouver, people tuning in from Scotland, from Bangkok, from Italy, sleepless in Italy. Yes, well, I think lots of people can't sleep with you know, the current news. Argentina, Chicago, Sydney. We've got people tuning in as well from Colorado, from Argentina, from Texas, from Florida, from New York City, from, and now it's going too fast, I can't read anything. Okay, so hopefully none of us get nuked, right? Or rather, there's you know, there's no nuclear war by the time we're done with the stream. That's kind of the risk right now. You know, these cities might not even exist by the time we're done. Okay, so let's just dive right in. Let's just dive right in, shall we? Okay, you guys should be able to see that on the screen right now. Yeah. Okay, so let me break this down for you. So Donald Trump has gone and bombed Iran, right? He said he was going to take up to 2 weeks to think about it. No, he's gone and done it. Yeah, that so-called anti-war president, the pro-peace president. I mean, people who voted for him must be feeling pretty stupid right now. But anyway, so they bombed probably the three most important sites in Iran. So the Natanz fuel enrichment site, that's Iran's #1 nuclear facility. And then they bombed Fordow, which is probably the hardest to get to. Okay, that one's near or in the vicinity of Qom, which is a very important religious city in Iran. And then, of course, they bombed Isfahan. Well, rather, the nuclear site at Isfahan. Isfahan is another important city. So I'll just show you on the map. You can see kind of where this is, where these strikes were spread out. Okay, so this is the Natanz site. That's the main uranium enrichment site for the Iranians. Okay, and this is not the first time it's been bombed. I'll come back to that in a second. But that's where Natanz is. This is where Fordow is. So just a bit further up, and then you can see here the Isfahan site. Okay, I was looking at this at all these sites with you just the other day, and I was thinking to myself, well, maybe it would have been better to go and put them way, way, way east, right? But you have to remember that precisely in the last 20 years, the United States were occupying Afghanistan. They're in Pakistan de facto as well. So honestly, would it really make that much of a difference? They've got basically they've got Iran surrounded from both sides. So anyway, that's a whole different issue. But Donald Trump has gone, and now, if it wasn't already clear enough, for me it was very clear, and I told you as much when Israel began attacking Iran on Friday, June 13th, 2025. I told you this is a US war. Israel doesn't fart or cough without the United States approving it and funding it and financing it and giving the nod. Okay? It doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. So now, in case you had any misconceptions, or you were under any misguided beliefs that you had bought into any misguided beliefs that the United States wasn't involved, well, now it should be very clear that they are. Okay, I know some people, like, they still it wouldn't click for them. Now it has to click for everyone. Okay, no one dragged the United States into a war. The United States is the war. It started the war. Okay, it's always been that way. And now this has become even clearer. Now what they've done is they've gone and used these bunker buster bombs. Now here you can see that on screen. I've got a photograph over here, right? So this kind of ordnance the Israelis actually don't have. I know that's shocking. I know that might come as a surprise to many of you, that there's a weapon of mass destruction. I mean, not literally like a WMD, but this does cause mass destruction in the literal sense that Israel doesn't have. Yes, actually, there are a few, but basically, Israel has it de facto, right? This is what we're talking about. Okay, so these things are so bloody heavy that you can't even. I don't think the Israelis even have the right planes for them. You need a B-2 to go and drop it, or a B-2 or a B-52. Okay, either one of those should do the trick. And again, forgive me for using the imperial system. I don't, but it's written in. You can see it written right there. It says 30,000 pounds. What is that? About 13,000 kilos? Yeah, 13,600 kilos. I mean, that is just goddamn behemoth. Now they're saying that they dropped these bombs on Fordow, on Natanz, and so on. Now, let me just explain something to you. That Fordow is buried so far deep underground. I think, honestly, short of a nuclear weapon, you're not going to really cause much damage there. Also, the Iranians are saying that they pulled all of their enriched uranium, their research, their advanced centrifuges. So we're talking about IR4, IR6, and especially IR8. As the names imply, these are the latest generations, right? I mean, like, if you take an IR6 and compare it to an IR1, you can enrich uranium at 10 times the speed, right? So anyway, so the point is the Iranians have moved the stuff. That's what they're saying, and I think, I would imagine they certainly have, and I don't think that they're going to be, set back or crippled in terms of their nuclear research and prowess by these strikes. I don't think so. Again, I'm just guessing. I'm just kind of speculating. But given everything that's happened, all the assassinations that have taken place, when they killed Fakhrizadeh, when they went and killed, the scientists last week, when they killed when the CIA and Mossad were killing scientists between 2010 and 2012, with the MEK as well. They didn't halt or really delay Iran's nuclear program. So, I mean, if anything, and I made this point in the other videos, that they actually helped speed it up because of their attacks, right? Like, that was a direct response to the sanctions, to the bombings, to the assassinations, the speeding up of Iran's nuclear program. And again, it's not a weapons program, but it obviously they have that technology. If they want to pursue a bomb, they can do it. They have the mines, the material, the research. They can do it if they want to, but they have not done it. And I'll show you this clip of just these these scumbags, like just the look, man. And I called them earlier on Twitter the neo conservatives. Yes, double. The neo conservatives. They really just look like a bunch of massive knobs.
Thank you very much. A short time ago, the U.S. military carried out massive precision strikes on the 3 key nuclear facilities in the Iranian regime: Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan. Everybody heard those names for years as they built this horribly destructive enterprise. Our objective was the destruction of Iran's
this horribly destructive enterprise. Like he says that after he literally just bombed them. What was destructive about it? Explain what was destructive. Like it's a civilian nuclear program, but okay. I'm gonna
nuclear enrichment capacity and a stop to the nuclear threat posed by the world's #1 state sponsor of terror.
Wait, so you bombed yourself?
Tonight I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated. Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make peace.
The bully of the Middle East, that's really rich coming from a US president. That is like rich.
If they do not, future attacks will be far greater and a lot easier. For 40 years, Iran has been saying death to America, death to Israel.
Yeah, why is that? Why do they say that, by the way? Does it? I'm just spitballing here. Does it maybe have something to do with the fact that they had a democracy in 1953, and then when they tried to nationalize their oil, the CIA and MI6 overthrew their democratically elected prime minister? Maybe it's something to do with that. I don't know. I'm just guessing.
They have been killing our people, blowing off their arms, blowing off their legs with roadside bombs. That was their specialty. We lost over 1,000.
Really? Where were these roadside bombs? In New York? Where did this happen? Uptown, in upstate New York, in Manhattan, in California. Where were these roadside bombs? Or were they actually in Iraq and Afghanistan, like Iran's direct neighbors? What were you doing there? Why were you in Iraq? Why were you in Afghanistan? Because, if you start a war, as the Israelis say, don't complain. Right? The Israelis love saying that. I'm just saying what the Israelis say. I'm not suggesting anything at all. But honestly, he just says, oh yeah, they were blowing off limbs, there's just someone just chopping people's limbs. Well, no. There's some context here. You illegally invaded 2 countries and occupied them for decades, and the Iranians, were concerned about their neighbors. Maybe you should give us that bit of information instead of acting like, yeah, they just separating people from their limbs, which is really funny also coming from him, given that I just saw a video earlier of a child having their leg amputated in Gaza thanks to bombs that Donald Trump sent. Right? I think that's very ironic.
1,000 people and hundreds of thousands throughout the Middle East and around the world have died as a direct result of their hate. In particular, so many were killed by their general, Qasem Soleimani. I decided...
Yeah, again, he's not telling you that whole part where the U.S. invades almost every country. And by the way, literally Iran is on that list of 7 countries that the neoconservatives wanted to take out. So it's kind of like, I wouldn't call it hypocrisy. That's too mild, right? He's just so full of it, isn't he?
I decided a long time ago that I would not let this happen. It will not continue. I want to thank and congratulate Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu. We worked as a team like perhaps no team has ever worked before.
Oh, wow. Even the Powder Puff Girls?
And we've gone a long way to erasing this horrible threat to Israel. I want to thank the Israeli military for the wonderful job they've done. And most importantly, I want to congratulate the great American patriots who flew those magnificent machines tonight, and all of the United States military on an operation the likes of which the world has not seen in many, many decades. Hopefully, we will no longer need their services. And
yeah, nothing screams patriotism, especially in the U.S., especially especially in the US, like flying halfway across the world to drop bombs on people that don't care about you and don't want anything to do with you. That for me is really American. Truly.
This capacity. I hope that's so. I also want to congratulate the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Raisin Kane, spectacular general, and all of the brilliant military minds involved in this attack. With all of that being said, this cannot continue. There will be either peace or there will be tragedy for Iran far greater than we have witnessed over the last 8 days. Remember, there are many targets left. Tonight's was the most difficult of them all, by far, and perhaps the most lethal. But if peace does not come quickly, we will go after those other targets with precision, speed, and skill.
The guy just bombed the Middle East and he's talking about peace. Like, what a joke of a person. What a joke of a person. And all these like morons standing behind these meatheads. Look at them. Look at them. They're neocons 2.0, or rather 3.0, I should say.
Most of them can be taken out in a matter of minutes. There's no military in the world that could have done what we did tonight, not even close. There has never been a military that could do what took place just a little while ago.
I'm really proud of his syntax and sentence construction. It really reflects an effort that's been put in. I mean, you know, look, man, I'm the first who's going to criticize, you know, the politics here. But when people make fun of the way he speaks, it's really accurate. Honestly, he does speak like a 12-year-old. Wasn't that something that I don't know? Someone did a study of his transcripts of his speeches and things like that. He really does speak like a 12-year-old.
Tomorrow, General Kane, Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth will have a press conference at 8 a.m. at the Pentagon. And I want to just thank everybody, and in particular, God. I want to just say we love you, God, and we love our great military.
What the hell does that have to do with anything? You just maybe killed a bunch of people. I don't know, actually, because we don't have any information. But you're definitely killing people every day, like in Palestine and in Iran too, right? Oh yeah, I just want to say we love God. That is so random, and the way he says it as well, it's just God. I mean, I don't know.
Protect them. God bless the Middle East. God bless Israel, and God bless America. Thank you.
God bless the Middle East. After he just dropped bombs, the biggest bombs that they have, or some of the biggest bombs that they have. It's not the biggest, but he just dropped these 30,000 pound, these 13,000 kilo explosives on the Middle East, and he says, God bless the Middle East. Oh man, oh man, oh man. I mean, these are the kind, the video's done, by the way. These are the kinds of, you know, this is the caliber of politician that we're dealing with. It's not even like, you know, it doesn't even like project any kind of authority. It's just, he's just a meathead who has his finger on the button, on the trigger, you know. It's embarrassing. This is really embarrassing. And like I was saying when we first started, I'm assuming, I'm hoping that this is a wake-up call for many people who voted for him. I was warning you since the last time that he was in power that, you know, he is the most Israeli or pro-Israel president the US has ever had. You know, you can take all the presidents before, put them together, and they haven't done as much as Donald Trump has done for Israel. And now he just, you know, he just keeps raising the bar, or I should say, you know, perhaps going the other direction. But he just keeps giving, right? Donald Trump is the gift for Israel that keeps on giving. I really mean that. I'm not saying that as hyperbole. I really mean that in the literal sense. He's delivering on so many fronts, right? It's quite remarkable. It's quite remarkable, and not in a good way. So I've been watching a coverage, you know, that they've been doing on ABC and all the channels, right? Like it's really mind-boggling seeing the level of propaganda that we're dealing with right now. They're trying to make this out to be like, oh yeah, it's back in 2000. Like there's no difference. And I'll show you some clips. If I put on ABC right now, and you just listen to the way that they're talking, it defies reality. It really defies reality. There's something so chilling and scary about it. Yeah, I'll put on ABC. Okay, And let's take a look at what they're saying.
Talking about the U.S. striking 3 Iranian nuclear sites, the president calling it a tremendous success. Speaking briefly with our John Carl earlier this evening before addressing the nation
Mary, you've
about
covered
this.
President Trump
and
for
Mary,
some...
you've covered President Trump for some time. You've covered him as a candidate, his promises. You've covered him as a candidate, his promises not to engage in the Middle East and in any more foreign wars. At the same time, he has long promised that Iran would not get a nuclear weapon.
Yeah, and David, just again 2 days ago, the White House, while saying that they were giving themselves this 2-week timeline, again stressed that Iran was very close to getting a nuclear weapon, saying that Iran had everything it needed to achieve a nuclear.
Do you see how by the way, I watched this before, so I'm not cutting her off. I can tell you with certainty. Do you see how she's repeating claims from the White House and from Donald Trump and from Israel without any pushback, without challenging or questioning or scrutinizing one bit, right? So she's saying, for example, that they gave Iran this timeline, this deadline of 60 days, and then basically kind of trying to justify what Donald Trump did, like as if it was something of a necessity. There was an absolute certainty that Iran were going to develop a nuclear weapon. He just had to act. And like I said in the other video, if anyone should be angry and perhaps less temperate, it's perhaps Iran, because they've been waiting for Donald Trump to get back in the deal, and then they tried with Biden as well for 7 years. It's been 7 years now. We're in June, right? And Donald Trump left the deal in May 2018. It's been over 7 years now, just over 7 years, that they've been waiting and negotiating and trying to get the Americans back. And I mean, honestly, that context is not mentioned. And then she just talks about, oh yeah, they were the White House says they were close to getting bombed. She doesn't challenge it. She doesn't question it. Well, no, they were not close to getting a bomb. Jesus Christ, don't you think that that's an important bit of information to question and scrutinize, because it's the foundation of the whole strike. And even then, by the way, who cares? Again, we go back to this question of like, why is it okay for Israel to have the nuclear weapon? Why is it a problem for Iran to have one after they tried diplomacy, right? Like, it's not Iran that exhausted or rather made sure that diplomacy came to an end. On the contrary, they did exhaust that avenue as much as they could, and it's the United States and Israel that keep spitting in their faces. So if anyone is to blame, that's my point, it's not Iran, is it? The level of leniency that's been expressed and shown is staggering. Someone might look at that and then actually blame the Iranians, and that's also a valid critique by saying, well, that you've been too lenient, you've been too kind. So anyway, by the way, I forgot to show you some photographs earlier of the B-2, just in case you don't know what it looks like. This is a B-2 bomber. And the B-52 obviously is a massive, massive, massive thing. So the Israelis needed the Americans to do this for them. Now, again, I stand by what I said earlier. I don't know. We don't have any figures on casualties and actual damage, but I can tell you already that Natanz, for example, since last week, since June 13th, there's alpha particle contamination in that facility already. So now if you've gone and bombed it again, and especially with B-2 bombers, I mean, you're really asking for serious contamination, not just alpha particles, but really an ecological disaster. You're begging for one at this point. And this is not the first time that they bombed Natanz, by the way. As I pointed out in the other video, they've attacked it with the Stuxnet virus. Well, that wasn't a bombing, obviously, but they did nevertheless. The end result was the same. The centrifuges broke and didn't have time to evacuate the UF6 hexafluoride uranium gas properly, right? Meaning there could have been a contamination event. So just completely reckless. And then they went and bombed it several times, I think in 2021, yeah. And then there's also another one that I'm forgetting about, but it's in the timeline I made. Regardless, my point still stands, is still valid nonetheless, that there's a reckless element to this behavior that is beyond, it's not just terrorism, it's something else. I mean, I don't know what to call it. And keep in mind the level of criticism that the Russians get for Zaporizhia, where it's alleged that they fired a shell near one of the, I think there was it wasn't even a site that had anything to do with enrichment. I think it was just like a kind of an annex, and it was an annex building that had nothing really in it. It was an administrative thing. And nevertheless, and perhaps rightfully so, I will concede that point. Perhaps rightfully so, people, gave them a lot of crap for that. Fine, that's okay. No one should be firing anything near a nuclear site. Why don't you say that about the Israelis when they repeatedly attack nuclear sites? Repeatedly. This is not just an affront on Iran's sovereignty, on Iran as a country. It's not just, this application of neoconservative foreign policy, but it's also, you could, I guess, call it nuclear terrorism, right? I know that sounds so sensationalized, but it really is. I mean, it's quite literally nuclear terrorism, right? And you should see the amount of crap that's coming out in the news right now. I mean, I've been listening to them, deliver their rolling coverage, and I'll give you a few examples. They've been talking about, there's sleeper cells in Iran, and Iranian sleeper cells that might be activated in the US. What are you on about? When has that happened? What Iranian sleeper cells in what country? Ever? There are no Iranian sleeper cells anywhere. That's not a thing. I do know what they're referring to, though. They're referring to that lie that they spread back in, when the so-called war on terror started, where they had this same kind of boogeyman, this mass hysteria that they were plugging on the airwaves about, oh my God, there might be Al-Qaeda sleeper cells. And once again, Iran and Al-Qaeda are mortal enemies, by the way, in case that wasn't obvious. It wouldn't be if all you've consumed is mainstream media. But my point is just that there are no sleeper cells. And this is a recycled lie or trope or, kind of a tool to engineer and ensure mass hysteria. And what does that ensure? Well, basically population control. That's the tool. Fear is the tool. And they're even talking about, hold on, there's some more I posted about them on Twitter earlier. Yeah. So, they were also talking about the threat level being raised. And that was immediately something that reminded me of that scale that the Department of Homeland Security, the DHS, came out with, which, by the way, was created by Bush right after or around the time of 9/11. And, they had a similar thing in the UK where you would have a public threat level or terrorism threat level. And, of course, they would just raise it and lower it at random without really explaining why. And then you might argue, well, yeah, of course, the security service is not going to reveal all the information they have. Yeah, but they were using it as an instrument of war. It wasn't just because there was an actual threat. The threat comes from those countries. It comes from the UK. It comes from the US. They're the threat to world peace. They're the nuclear terrorists that are, normalizing blowing up nuclear sites. I mean, this is, there is no evidence that any of this had actually been vindicated or that it was corroborated by anything that we can verify. We're just supposed to randomly trust that, oh yeah, there's a threat level. And explain this to me, like, why would you be afraid of Iran doing something to the US? Like, when have they ever done something to the US? Just give me one example. I'm not talking about the embassy, and even that, there's tons of lies around it. I'm saying on mainland United States soil. When have the Iranians ever done anything in the US or Europe? You see what I'm saying? So what's going on here is like there's a really interesting level of fuckery where they go and they bomb Iran, and then it's immediately, oh, we're the victims, right? Sound familiar? I mean, Israel does it every day, and they are really, really like well versed in it. But the United States and the West do it a lot as well. It's the same kind of thing, like, oh, well, they're the perfect and permanent victims. Everything is self-defense, bombing a nuclear site, murdering a scientist with their family while they're sleeping at home. Everything is justified. Dropping bunker busters, maybe contaminating a nuclear site, killing children, blowing their limbs off. It's always justified. It's always defensive every single time. There are no mistakes. There are no war crimes. The West is the victim. this permanent garbage. And that's why they have to do this. Like, oh my God, we're concerned about cyber attacks and about sleeper cells and dirty bombs. Look, they're doing the whole shtick right now. I can show you one clip. This is from ABC News just now.
Bring in Pierre Thomas, our Chief Justice correspondent, back stateside, covering the domestic threat. Of course, people watching us here in a
the domestic threat. It's like being back in 2003. I don't know how well you guys remember 2001, 2002, 2003. I remember it very well. And it's really like, if you showed me the transcript, you could have fooled me. I would have probably guessed that it's from back then, right?
Saturday night, Pierre, want to know what is Iran's capability, not only to react overseas throughout the region with thousands of U.S. military stationed across the region, but also here in the U.S. We know that there are lone wolves, there are actors that certainly Iran would want to react in some sort of way to the U.S. action we've witnessed tonight. What are U.S. authorities here?
Would hope. Why do they automatically assume that Iran is like equally unhinged? I think a lot of this is projection, I really think a lot of the time it's projection. It's not just being dishonest. It's like kind of, well, I would do that if I were in their shoes, so they obviously want to do it to me. Right?
Here in the homeland prepared for potentially, and what have they said?
Well, David, one of the things they're most concerned about in the immediate future would be the potential for cyber attacks. Iran and its proxies have shown some capabilities to project from thousands of miles away. That's an immediate threat. DHS actually put out a notice just a couple of weeks ago after Israel started to attack Iran, warning the U.S. infrastructure, that's the electrical grid, energy sector, financial sector, to
what's funny is that the Stuxnet virus, there was, I forget the name of the documentary, but towards the end, they interviewed someone from, I forget, was it, I know who made the virus, it was CIA, not NSA, but I don't know if this particular person was NSA or CIA, regardless, they were US intelligence, and they were raising the point that, Iranian power grid is a target or a potential target. And if you look at also, just historically, who's gone after the power grid as a main weapon of war, not like a side, as collateral damage, as they like to call it, or as a side or a secondary target. No. Like as a main tool, right? Like, we're going to turn off the electricity. Who does that? The Israelis. Who goes and turns off the water? The Israelis. That's an Israeli thing to do. That's a very, very Israeli thing to do. They didn't invent that. They're not the first in history to do that. But they love doing it, and they do it better and on a bigger scale than anyone else. And they do it more frequently than anyone else, okay? That's why it's Israeli. And it's a very US thing to do as well, because Israel couldn't do it without the US. So, again, you see the projection that's going on here. And it remains a matter of fact that the Iranians have never targeted the energy infrastructure in the United States. When did they do that? Why would you be worried about them doing that? It's projection.
To double check their computer systems to make sure that they have the proper defense mechanism. So that's a concern. There's obviously always been concern about the ability of Iran, to project
getting our little, neocon targets mixed up. It's okay. It's okay. Who wouldn't do it, right?
Inside the United States. Do they have operatives here? The U.S. government has made a number of cases involving Iranian operatives in the United States attempting to impact dissidents here, that sort of thing. Also, there would be concern.
Impact dissidents. What the fuck does that even mean? What does that mean? Impact dissidents. What? That's so abstract.
About just a general reaction to the notion of the U.S. government, the U.S. military, taking a military strike to the homeland of Iran. So officials here will be looking at that kind of thing as well, David.
Yeah, okay, so basically that was like almost 2 minutes of just Iran, boogeyman. That's what it was. They didn't actually say anything. They didn't explain what the threat was, if it's actually real. It's just, hey, man, they could do it. And that really strikes at the heart of the whole nuclear thing as well. There is no proof of a nuclear weapons program, but they could do it, right? It's so tacky. It's just all of it. It's so tacky. It was really tacky. So they mentioned U.S. bases, by the way, which is not a domestic thing because they're overseas. That's kind of the point of that's kind of the point that people are complaining about when they raise the issue of US bases, is that they litter the planet. And I don't just mean that they pollute. I mean, like, the planet is littered with them. Okay, there's so many. Look at this, for example. I think Ben Norton posted this earlier. So in any case, you can see just all of these bases and lily pads and forward operating bases. You know, it's basically, it's not a complete picture. I guarantee there are many more stations than this. But regardless, we have an estimate of 40,000 U.S. troops. So I can imagine the Iranians going now and striking some of those U.S. bases. You know, they have to make a choice. I mean, they're really right now. The Iranians are between a rock and a hard place. They have to decide: are they going to, hit U.S. bases? Are they going to strike U.S. assets and U.S. targets? And by the way, I should add one more thing. It's not just a B-2, or rather the U.S. Air Force that bombed Iran right now. They also use submarines. They fire Tomahawk cruise missiles from U.S. submarines. So, you know, this raises the issue of what kind of caliber will Iran's response be. And, you know, when they killed Soleimani, for example, they responded by striking the Ain al-Assad air base in Iraq, which is not just a US base, it's a coalition base, regardless. And they reported a bunch of TBIs afterwards, you know, these traumatic brain injuries. I still, honestly, I have no idea if that was like meant to cover up that, you know, more serious injuries. Regardless, I can imagine that the Iranians are probably going to respond by hitting US bases now, because we were raising this last week when Israel began the war, or rather Israel and the US, but the US role was a bit more, clandestine. Well, there was still the issue of, are they going to hit Aramco? Are they going to hit the U.S. oil fields or the Saudi oil fields and UAE oil fields that and the Qatari oil fields that provide the U.S. with oil? Are they going to block the Strait of Hormuz or close the Strait of Hormuz? Because you have like 1/5 of the world's oil traffic that goes through there, flows from there. And are they going to hit U.S. bases? These are really the three main cards that Iran can play right now. And I think I told you, I think I was, you know, I said that they're probably going to save that for a future moment such as now, because if they play those cards, they really have nothing left to play afterwards. Honestly, you're not going to go and see Iran firing cruise missiles or rather intercontinental ballistic missiles at the United States. I do not see that happening at all, which kind of speaks to the whole difference in strategy. And I cannot imagine Iran flying bombers to the United States and then bombing the US. It's not going to happen, right? It doesn't sound like their strategy or posture. And honestly, do they even have the capability? No, they don't. So they have a limited amount of options right now. And if they don't respond, I think honestly that you can probably discard Iran after that if they don't respond. I really think that will be the final nail in the coffin, because if they do that, and again, I'm not into this whole like, oh yeah, they have to do it so they can look strong and, you know, like be all alpha and shit. No, I'm really not into that. But you saw that video I did on the nuclear deal, like how far they went with diplomacy, how far they went, like as if it was a bad thing. But they really exhausted that avenue and that course of action until there was no recourse, simply. And it's not their fault. It's the Americans' fault. It's the Israelis' fault. They basically responded to diplomacy by spitting in Iran's face, murdering them, bombing them. So, you know, it's not like there is a chance for diplomacy. I suppose that's the point that I'm trying to drive home, is that I just don't understand or see or I can't imagine this going any other way, because they have, the Americans and Israelis have ensured that they've left basically they burnt all the bridges. Really, it wasn't just something that they did a few years ago. When you go and you do these kinds of things like bombing Natanz during negotiations, that's not just something that happened last week. You know, people grasp that, okay, there were talks, and then the Americans during the talks, the Israelis during the talks, go and bomb Iran. Yeah, but that wasn't even the first time. It's bad enough just to happen once, but they did that as well in April 2021, right? During the talks in Vienna, the Israelis go and bomb the Natanz. So this is a repeated, you know, this pattern of behavior keeps repeating itself, and I don't see it improving or changing in any way. That's really my point. So I'm not hypothesizing. I'm kind of basing it off of concrete examples and factual evidence where Iran engaged in diplomacy in good faith, and then the response is bombs, violence, and accusations of non-compliance. So what can you do in this situation except respond? Now, obviously, I suppose the third option, right? The third option would be that they they absorb the blows, and I also hinted at this when the war began, that they could also just absorb and take and accept the damage, the destruction, the deaths, the assassinations, and then go behind the scenes and build the bomb and use that as deterrence. Not actually to drop one, but just to have it as deterrence, and then, you know, through mutually assured destruction, they would be covered. Now that assumes that, of course, they won't be that no one's going to pick up on it, that they won't be detected or found out while they're doing that, that they actually will have the political capital and will to do it, that they'll have the material and the scientists and the facilities left to do it. I don't think they will. I don't think they will if they do nothing. I think that the Iranians are basically going to invite the Americans and Israelis to bomb Iran further if they don't do anything, and that obviously makes me very sad, because I think we can all agree that the best course of action would actually be diplomacy, right? Like that would have, it did work. It's not that it's nice and you know, we would like to imagine that it works. It did work when the JCPOA, you know, from 2015 to 2018, it worked perfectly. There was no problem. You know, the Americans invented a problem. They made it up. So we know that diplomacy works, especially in this case about this topic between these actors. It can work. It has worked, but I don't see it, unfortunately, you know, being revived right now in any case, at least not with this administration. And it's, you know, it's only been 6 months, so it's not looking bright. It's not like Donald Trump is going to leave and there's going to be a change of administration. And besides, even if there was, you saw Biden behave the exact same way as Donald Trump in every regard in foreign policy. So, you know, it's really not looking hopeful, is it? They're really between a rock and a hard place, the Iranians, and watching some of the coverage also, oh god, it's goddamn infuriating. Just chock full of propaganda and kind of, you know, there was this point being made that, well, Iran, no one likes Iran. I think the guy on ABC News literally said it like word for word. He said, well, no one likes Iran, no one's going to come and save them. Something, you know, I'm paraphrasing, but he said it almost identically. And honestly, I don't see the Russians getting involved, and I don't see the Chinese getting involved. Now, some people might look at that and say, well, they're going to be on the chopping, you know, they're next on the chopping block. They're going to be next after this if they don't help Iran. And that's actually, well, I mean, Russia's already on the chopping block with Ukraine and NATO and so on. And China definitely. So that's really going to happen either way. Honestly, that is going to happen either way. Unfortunately, there's so much bloodlust in these intelligence circles and in the military-industrial complex and Wall Street and you know, Washington. It's just nothing is going to stop them. They've set the sights on China a long time ago and on Iran and Russia. They want to crush them. They want to defeat them and pulverize them. So, you know, I don't think that that's going to change anything. But for Iran, obviously, so basically my point is just that if they don't stand up for themselves, you know, they shouldn't expect anyone else to come save them. They have to stand up for themselves. I think that's really their only course of action right now, which again is not because anyone wants to see a broader conflict or all-out war. It's the Americans and Israelis who have repeatedly spat in their faces and discarded diplomacy and brought us down this path of you know, death and destruction and nuclear terrorism. It's very, very, very unfortunate. They've left the Iranians no choice. That is the bottom line of what I'm trying to say. They have left Iran no choice. Now, in Iran, of course, you have to remember that they have Pezeshkian, who is in power right now. Pezeshkian hails from the reformist camp, quote unquote. Although, again, I told you that even with the hardliners, quote unquote, they love these titles are funny. You know, there was no change in policy. They were adamant about negotiating reaching a negotiated settlement and a diplomatic agreement about the nuclear file. There was no disagreement, no change in policy. So that is a plus, of course, from Iran's side, because it shows consistency and it demonstrates good faith and goodwill. But when it comes to foreign policy, there is a difference between those two camps. Okay, speaking more broadly, of course, but also on this issue. And I suppose the hardliners are maybe a little less naive, shall we put it that way, than the reformists. You know, the reformists have this kind of idea that, well, you know, somehow, some way, someday, we'll get through to the Americans and they'll like us and they'll lift sanctions and then they'll stop murdering us. And I think it's about time that they woke up. That's kind of my point. You know, and whatever they do next, I have no idea. But I don't think that they've been left any choice, which is very unfair, because if anything, they're probably the ones that tried to, have a diplomatic settlement the most. Now, other people will look at that and say, actually, no, on the contrary, that's just being naive and inviting destruction. Whatever. It doesn't change my point that, basically they have been left no choice, regardless what camp they are. And I think that's why you're seeing in Iran all these people uniting and coalescing behind, this patriotic sentiment. Even those that don't hail from either one of these camps, that are, maybe even from the opposition, that are expatriates or exiles even. Obviously, there are some people who are celebrating it, but I haven't, when I say some people, I really mean like a handful. I've barely seen any of that. It's mostly been everybody, all these Iranians, regardless where they are, whether they're more liberal or conservative, it doesn't matter. I've just seen this national unity, and that is obviously a good thing. And Arabs actually could learn a thing or two about that the next time, the West attacks. But it's a bit late for that, isn't it? So this is some footage. It's just a few seconds from outside of Fordo, or rather the Fordo facility in Qom, and you can't see much, but it's been posted by a number of news outlets, so I thought I'd play it nevertheless. It's the only clip we really have, actually. I guess their point was that, there's no destruction or whatever, but yeah. So the MP, or rather the member of the Mejlis in Iran, who represents this constituency, represents Qom, was saying that the Fordo plant was, quote, not seriously damaged, and that the US president is lying. Okay? So they're saying, this MP is saying that the damage is basically limited to the ground level, ground story, and that, it's basically just superficial damage. I mean, honestly, if you look at Natanz, I know Natanz is obviously not as, buried deep underground like Fordo is, but just to give an analogy, if you measure radiation levels outside of Natanz, you're not going to find any spikes, but on the inside, there's definitely contamination of alpha particles. So I think what's really concerning is what the situation is on the inside of the facility, and it's not just about concrete, or shall we say physical damage. It's really more about is there any contamination. That's really the main worry here. Okay, I don't think anyone was really worried about structural damage. It's really about radioactivity and other contamination from, because again, all of these sites actually serve different functions, but they've done enrichment at all of them. So it's definitely a real risk. So I'll show you this statement as well. This is from the foreign minister of Iran, and he said that the United States, a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council, has committed a grave violation of the UN Charter, international law, and the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty by attacking Iran's peaceful nuclear installations. The events this morning are outrageous and will have everlasting consequences. Each and every member of the United Nations must be alarmed over this extremely dangerous, lawless, and criminal behavior. In accordance with the UN Charter and its provisions allowing a legitimate response in self-defense, Iran reserves all options to defend its sovereignty, interests, and people. Yeah, so, I mean, Article 51, UN Charter, is very clear about that. And obviously, this is not a cynical use of that. This is, because the Americans, for example, when they murdered Soleimani, went and claimed that they were, that it was self-defense at the UN. And the UN, I think, I forget which special rapporteur it was now, but basically one of them looked at it and just said no. But anyway, I'm just gonna say and make the point that in this case, when you fly all the way from the United States to bomb Iran, yeah, Iran has the right to self-defense. Not to mention that Israel attacked them a week ago with U.S. bombs. So it's important to note that what the Americans did is they flew. So they gave the impression. I'll show you this article. Okay. that, you know, they were moving B-2 bombers to Guam. They weren't actually. What they did is they basically flew. Yeah, look, they said they're moving them to the Pacific island of Guam. Yeah. They were trying to cover up the fact that they were actually going to Iran to bomb Iran. So they went on a massive detour. Well, I mean, you're on the other side of the planet. Is there really a faster way to get there? No. But nevertheless, my point here is just how they use, you know, the media. They feed and they plant stories in the media like this one to cover up their plans and to basically. Well, obviously in war you want the element of surprise, but it's not about that. It's like, for example, Donald Trump saying, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna think about this for the next 2 weeks." He said that just yesterday. Did 2 weeks pass? Did even 1 week pass? Did a few days pass? No. It was just lying so that he could make sure that America's violence, Israel's violence, would be as potent as possible against Iran. And that's really the point here, is a cynical use of diplomacy, or the illusion of diplomacy, or détente, or thawing of relations to just carry out more effective violence. And it's a permanent thing, right? It's a permanent it's part of their toolbox, and we saw that during the nuclear negotiations, you know, with this good cop bad cop routine. But just to give you an idea, I just wanted to inform you about the flight path that they took. They actually, that was the cover-up story, and you had people on ABC earlier kind of praising that and saying, "Oh yeah, the maneuvering by the White House was so good." You know, let me actually put it back on and see what kind of bollocks they're up to right now.
To foreign intervention, to foreign bombing. In many senses, it can act as a rallying call for the nation to get behind the leader, in this case, this theocracy that has run Iran since the 1980s. And so we have to wait and see what the reaction is. Every
time they bring that up, I have to counter with the fact that Iran was a democracy until 1953. And that ended because of the CIA and MI6 wanting to steal oil from Iran. So, you know, shut up, honestly. And you're going to come here and tell me, like, Israel, which is, you know, an ethno-state that claims to represent Jews and uses violence, you know, with biblical theming, is any better, really? I mean, it's not even comparable, frankly. It's not even comparable. The difference in mentalities is staggering, and it's not, you know, the Iranians don't cynically say, "Oh yeah, we're an Islamic Republic," because they want to, you know, advertise themselves or represent themselves as being better than everyone and say, "Oh, we're the chosen ones." They have a nuclear doctrine that says only civilian use because of that religious decree. So they actually use their implementation of religion and politics is actually beneficial, not just to them, but to others, you know, to the planet. They actually believe in non-proliferation, not just from a political standpoint, from a religious standpoint. That's really, you know, whereas the Israelis, "Oh yeah, Samson option, let's just first strike nuclear doctrine." Like, look at the difference. But you don't see anyone calling them an ethno-state or a theocracy or anything like that, right? No, it's the Jewish state. And they are so, you know, it's a land of milk and honey. No one was there, and, you know, they just strolled in and just took it, you know, and look, they made the desert blue and all these fucking stupid phrases that they come up with to kind of sell their settler colonialism. It's nasty stuff. But yeah, I'm going to switch. Let's just flick through the channels and kind of just debunk. Let's just some live anti-BS, right? Is CNN live? I'm going on their channel. I see a bunch of videos posted. I guess we could just kind of, yeah, fact checking. I wish they'd fact check themselves, honestly. So no, they don't seem to be live. Let's check out Fox News. Okay, what's up with Fox?
Meantime, let's get back to this country and Washington. The chief national security correspondent Jennifer Griffin is live for us at the Pentagon. Jennifer.
Well, Trace, I think what's so extraordinary about tonight's strikes, not only all eyes were on Fordo, and for the past week we've been talking about the B-2 bombers and the massive ordnance penetrators. Those are the 30,000-pound GBU-57 bunker buster bombs. What we can report tonight, after Sean Hannity spoke to the president, we learned that there were 6 massive ordnance penetrators dropped on Fordo. And as the president wrote on Truth Social, that Fordo site is gone. My sources tell me that those bunker
I doubt that. Again, I'm not saying there was no damage, but I think short of a nuclear strike, a tactical nuke, you're not going to get rid of Fordo. That's just my 2 cents. Could be wrong, but I think I know what I'm talking about, specifically when it comes to Iran nuclear deal and Iran nuclear program, more than these people. Okay, I don't think it's even comparable.
Buster bombs would have been dropped through the air ventilation shafts at Fordo. So most likely 3 bunker busters through each of those shafts. We had been focusing on the entrances. There are 2 entrances to the Fordo site, which is 300 feet underground. We've also reported that the MOP bomb can penetrate about 200 feet underground, but they work in pairs. The B-2 bomber, which flew out of Whiteman Air Force Base, they fly nonstop and are refueled along the way to this site at Fordo. They drop one MOP bomb, a 30,000-pound bomb that goes about 200 feet down. There's soil that is then removed, exposed, and then the second bomb, which drops into a hole that has a radius of about 25 feet. It goes into the same hole and can go even deeper. So Fordo, we understand, is gone. That is significant because that was the main nuclear enrichment site, and it was deeply.
No, it's not. It's Natanz. What the fuck is she on about? It's absolutely not. It's Natanz. Ridiculous. Okay. Anyway, they're assuming that the Iranians left everything in those facilities, and that I really doubt that they did. If you look at the country, most of their facilities are located basically on the same axis as Tehran, and or slightly to the west. Okay. Now, that makes it easier, not completely. They still need to refuel it mid-air. But, it would be much smarter or perhaps wiser to place them further east, right? And I'm assuming, this is just a guess, but I'm assuming they have some east that are maybe not active. Maybe they're just warehouses. Who knows, right? I'm sure they have plenty of nice military installations where they have spread the knowledge. They've put backups there. They've put their centrifuges there. Their R&D is nice and secure. I doubt that they left also all their enriched uranium in these sites, knowing that they've been blown up in the past and that they were going to get blown up again. I don't. So even if my point is, even if that facility really is gone, it's completely physically obliterated. That doesn't mean that Iran's nuclear program is. And I'm not inviting the United States and Israel to try again. That's not my point. My point is that they are actually the reason that Iran's nuclear program is so advanced. They really are. Iran wouldn't have been able to do the research and was not doing that research until they left the deal and started bombing them and assassinating them. So it's like, their violence is actually just counterproductive if their concern is really about limiting Iran's nuclear program. But we all know that that's not what it's about. They constantly drop these hints. Hints. It's quite bloody obvious about regime change. We're gonna kill Khamenei and he's hiding somewhere, and maybe or maybe not we'll get him. Iranians rise up. Right? Naftali Bennett was posting that, and the former Israeli PM. So they want regime change. It's always been about regime change. They just don't like Iran's foreign policy, right? They don't like Iran's stance when it comes to U.S. imperialism, when it comes to Zionism. Iran doesn't like seeing its neighbors occupied and invaded by the United States. And again, it begs the question, what is the United States doing on the other side of the planet? There's no good answer or justification for it, is there? You look at Iraq and you look at Afghanistan, and it's more lies, and it's more wars built on more lies. It's never ending, is it? So, no matter what way you look at this, it's very difficult to square that circle and kind of just like point the finger and the blame at Iran at the end. It's just, I don't see how that works. But I feel like I'm watching an ad by Raytheon when I see this stuff, Very good, very good. Or Boeing, rather. Anyway, proceed.
Fortified in that mountain. But then there are the two other sites. You have Natanz, which had 3 underground enrichment facilities. Those 3, we understand that 30 Tomahawk missiles were fired from U.S. submarines about 400 miles away from these sites, the sites at Isfahan and Natanz. Those U.S. submarines were most likely Ohio-class converted guided missile subs. Most likely the USS Georgia or Florida were involved in those strikes. What I'm being told, though, is at Isfahan is an even harder target than Fordow. We hadn't talked about it as much this week because all the focus was on the B-2s and the MOP bombs and Fordow. But Isfahan is where the uranium hexafluoride is, where the centrifuges are made. And my understanding is there is a tunnel into the mountain there, and it is much, much deeper than at Fordow. And so we will have to wait and see the bomb damage assessment at that site to see how, whether it was completely destroyed. I'm told from very, very knowledgeable sources that.
No. What is shown about? God, again, it just goes to show you how they don't even have basic knowledge about Iran's nuclear sites. They have no clue what they're talking about. You don't have uranium, so UF6 gas or uranium hexafluoride gas. It's not at one facility only. Well, what was she talking about then when she said that there are several floors at Natanz that enrich uranium, which is correct. They have the pilot, and then there's the bigger ones, the bigger halls with cascades underneath. Yeah, there's also UF6 gas over there. There's also stuff at Fordow. It's not only in Isfahan. And by the way, they manufacture. Look, when it comes to manufacturing the centrifuges, that's also not done exclusively at Fordow. When I think of that, I think of Courage first and foremost. Like, again, they have no idea what they're on about. It's impressive in a really bad way.
That was most likely the hardest site, so we'll have to see.
I know we're still getting new information coming in here, Jennifer, but just for kind of clarification here, we have been told, or we've been kind of reporting that the B-2s went in and they went into Fordow and may have dropped as many as 6 of the bunker busters, and there were as many as 30 Tomahawks fired at Natanz and Isfahan. And I'm wondering, do we know, have we ruled out the possibility of any bunker busters being used on Isfahan and on Natanz?
I'm told that the bunker busters were used at Fordow and that it was the Tomahawks that targeted Natanz and Isfahan. So at this point in time, you would have had at least 3.
Yeah, again, it doesn't matter what you were told. Use your fucking brain. If you actually knew anything about the sites, you would know Fordow is like it's a mountain basically. So yeah, you're obviously going to want to use the bunker busters on that one because it's the most difficult to penetrate. Obviously, yes. God. Anyway, and there was another point I wanted to make, and I forgot now. But yeah, look, last week the Israelis struck all 3 of these sites, the exact same ones. Okay, that's something they haven't mentioned. I haven't seen anyone else mention it for some reason, and that is why they went after these 3, because when they hit Natanz, they were checking for contamination and so on, and I got this info from the International Atomic Energy Agency. They didn't know if there was any contamination yet at Fordow and at Isfahan, but they had been told that those had been struck. Okay, Iran had told them, and then I got that info that they had been struck. So it makes sense that you have the US then going after those 3 because they want to compound, or rather add to, and build on top of the. Well, that doesn't make sense. They're not building; they're doing the opposite. They're destroying. But figuratively speaking, they want to build on the destruction that Israel wrought last week, so they can maximize the destruction of these facilities. So it makes perfect sense that they went after these, and it's. Again, they don't even address the issue of contamination. They don't even discuss it or mention it. And you see these statements. I'll show you one from for example, the Secretary General of the UN. Just useless. Like, again, one of these softy little non-statements, right? And of course you expect that from politicians, but look at how there's no mention of the issues I just raised with contamination, with You know, the fact that this is a war of aggression, which is considered the supreme international crime. Look, I'm gravely alarmed. Motherfucker, I'm something else than gravely alarmed. More like I'm worried about being nuked. I think, you know, we have three theaters of war right now that could easily turn into a full-fledged nuclear winter. So I'm more than a little of, you know, I'm more than just gravely alarmed. I'm a little bit worse than that. I don't know about you guys, but I am gravely alarmed, he says, by the use of force by the US against Iran today. This is a dangerous escalation. Well, it's not really just an escalation. It's just, I mean, escalation of what? The other war that they started last week? Like, you know, at one point you just have to call out who's being violent. You can't just be like, oh yeah, this is a region that's already on the edge. Right? It's like when Donald Trump, he that was so funny, right? He did this he put out this like, he made this comment that, oh yeah, they've been fighting for thousands of years, you know, and then he tried to do the same thing about India and Pakistan. It's like, no, they have not been doing that. You know, but there's always this kind of, this Western kind of arrogance that, oh yeah, they're just a bunch of savages. They're always fighting for some reason. It's got nothing to do with us, with the Crusades, with imperialism, with slavery, with stealing their stuff, with, you know, the oils, the new conservatives, with the French, the British. No. They just, you know, they like fighting. They're just savages. Yeah, right? We had nothing to do with that. So anyway, there's always that tone in these statements, right? Our region that's plagued by what? Say it. So, a direct threat to international peace and security. Yes, that's a bit better, but, you know, came at the end of the sentence like it's a side comment. So he then goes on to say there's a growing risk that this conflict could rapidly get out of control. No, I think it's already out of control, good sir. With catastrophic consequences for civilians, the region, and the world. Yes, and the environment. Remember the contamination. I call on member states. Well, why member states? Why not say I call on Israel and the US? You know, the motherfuckers doing the bombing. To de-escalate and to uphold their obligations under the UN Charter and other rules of international law. At this perilous hour, it is critical to avoid a spiral of chaos. There's no military solution. The only path forward is diplomacy. I mean, yeah, I think I made my point, and I think it's rather well taken by the audience. So I think we'll just leave that at that. Was there anything else that I forgot to tell you? I mean, you know, this whole situation is just absolutely wild. Let me check for any updates before I continue, because we still haven't really heard anything from the Iranians. There's just that foreign ministry statement. That statement from the foreign minister that I showed you. There's that statement from the MP of Qom. But I mean, besides that, there's nothing conclusive or indicative of what kind of action they're going to take. I can tell you just as a short update with Israel. I mean, this is Israel, but whatever. More specifically, when they're trading blows with Iran. So just yesterday, okay, so this is like early hours of Saturday, the Israelis, they went and killed 2 commanders in the Quds Force. So that's what Soleimani used to command. It's a branch of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC. And they also killed the former bodyguard of Nasrallah, right? And his son, by the way. I don't know how old his son is. I think maybe a toddler or something, but whatever. My point is just that why like what kind, are you running out of targets? Like you're going after a bodyguard, a former bodyguard too. Like, you know, you killed Nasrallah. The guy's been dead for a few months now. And you went and killed his bodyguard and his son in Iran. Like, what? That is so random. And I mean, you can even call it vindictive, right? I don't understand the military value or reasoning behind that target. I don't. It wasn't an accident, by the way. They targeted him. It's just it shows the Israelis seem to be running out of targets. And at the same time, I'm thinking of that and going, well, they target civilians, so no, I guess they're not running out of targets. That you know, that's just what they do. Whatever, you can make of that what you will. I'm just relaying the information and you know, keeping you informed. So you have a bunch of Latin American countries that have at least come out and condemned what's happened right now with Donald Trump bombing Iran. So Cuba, president of Chile as well, the Venezuelan foreign ministry. There's also the Colombian foreign ministry, the Mexican foreign ministry. So, well, I mean, they would know all about, with the Monroe Doctrine, they know all about U.S. Sphere of influence and what it means to be on the receiving end. So, when, for example, the Iranian embassy was bombed by Israel, Jesus, I mean, the whole list of these crimes is like fucking wild, honestly. Sometimes I say it and I'm like, that happened. Oh yeah, that actually happened. They did that. Anyway, when that happened, I recall Latin American countries were the first to condemn that. And also when it came to the genocide in Gaza, in Palestine, they were some of the first to cut relations or cut ties and throw out their Israeli ambassadors. I mean, not some of the first, they were the only ones. They were the only ones. You had 2 or 3 Latin American, Central American countries. Now, this is kind of funny, this stuff here. You see some people in the US, this is Chuck Schumer, but he's just one example. I can find you a bunch of others. There's one I tweeted earlier. But it's basically mostly Democrats, right? Like, they're not upset that Donald Trump went and bombed Iran, that he might have caused, contamination of a nuclear site of nuclear substances, radioactive materials. They're not upset that he broke the UN Charter, he violated it, that, he carried out what is considered the supreme international crime since the Nuremberg tribunals. No. They don't care about that. They don't give a fuck about Iran. They don't care. They love war. Obviously, they love war. Duh. They're upset that he didn't ask them first, right? That he didn't go through Congress first. Because of course, if he had done that, then everything would be fine, right? Like his behavior is exemplary, all right? I mean, he's just a model of what it means to be a peaceful, rational dude. So they're more upset about that, right? And that's like all they'll say. They say nothing else. They don't talk about the, like I said, the environmental impact, the impact on civilians, the impact on international law. No. It's just like, oh, you didn't go through Congress. As if, if he had gone through Congress, that would make it all right. Well, I have news for you. You probably already know what I'm going to say. It doesn't matter if he went through Congress or not, because it would still be illegal. So, Iraq, for example, Bush got an authorization for the use of military force. That's an AUMF that you obtain under the War Powers Resolution of 1973. And he got one as well for the war. I should call it War of Terror, right, or War on Terror. In 2001, that's the AUMF of 2001, and then for Iraq, it's the AUMF of 2002. Okay. So both of those were legal, quote unquote, in the United States. But unfortunately, Afghanistan and Iraq are not inside the United States. So internationally, they were still illegal. The wars were still illegal. And now some smart arse will say, yeah, but the UN with Afghanistan, shut the fuck up, honestly. So anyway, that doesn't change the fact that, those were wars of aggression. Okay, going to U.S. law is not international law. It's just U.S. law. And I know Americans, and especially those in power, like to think that the whole world belongs to them, but that's not how it works. So, no. Bad news. It doesn't matter if you go through Congress. You're still, you're still committing an act of aggression, and it's still an act of war. And the fact that Congress would likely give it to him, I don't mean that literally, but like that they would give him the AUMF, I can guarantee you, I bet anything, if he goes to Congress right now, they'll give it to him. Because the whole Congress is filled with warmongers. So, I mean, the whole point of the War Powers Resolution and the AUMF is null and void, because you're going to get permission for every war. So why the fuck even bother? I mean, it's just it's pointless, right? It's literally pointless. They all want the wars. They are all of the same conviction, and there's a consensus about murdering people on the other side of the planet that just kind of crosses party lines and reaches across the aisle. So there's no need for the AUMF. It's kind of, they're just bollocking him around because they don't really know what else to say. They don't actually have anything of substance to add. So yeah, that's kind of So in any case, I can give you also some news that the Iranians have launched a massive volley on of missiles on the Israelis right now. So this is just after the U.S. bombing of Iran. I mean, again, it sounds so stupid trying to separate the two as if they're different countries or different entities or different actors. They're one actor. They are one actor. I mean, Israel is a FOB. It's a forward operating base for the United States. It's nothing more. So here, I'll show you this clip from Trey. Give me a second. Yeah, it won't play for some reason. I think I can get you to hear the audio, but I don't know why it's giving me a tough time. Okay, there you go.
Iranians have just launched a large-scale ballistic missile attack against Israel following those American strikes overnight that targeted Iran's nuclear facilities. We've heard massive explosions amid interceptions overhead. Initially, we were reporting outside. We've taken some cover here as this attack continues. So far, it's been in 2 waves targeting Tel Aviv. 2 sets of sirens sounded, and some really, really large interceptions that are shaking the entire building that we are in. There are no reports yet of impacts, but it's very early. We have to wait and see what extra information that we can gather. But again, the latest information that I have right now, Iran has launched another large ballistic missile attack against Israel. Sirens are sounding across this country from Jerusalem to Tel Aviv. There are currently millions of people in bomb shelters taking cover as this fire continues from Iran.
Yeah. By the way, you should really be aware of the fact that when we're talking about, for example, the Iranians hitting Israel, because Israel, I mean, occupied Palestine is so tiny in comparison that when the sirens go off, the whole country, basically, the whole colony, all the settlers have to go and rush into the bunkers. It really is, like he says, millions of people in the bunkers. It's something we've never seen before. It's completely unprecedented. And here's some footage, by the way. We do know that Haifa has been struck. I can give you that information now. This is footage of Haifa, which is about 30 kilometers from the border, the so-called border, right? I mean, who drew that? Someone in Paris? Literally. So basically from where Lebanon is the so-called quote-unquote border, it's 30 kilometers, right? And here you can see this footage right now of just the plumes of smoke rising. And here, this is another angle that I've got for you. Yeah, so this is just coming in now in the last couple of minutes, and just to give you an idea, so far nothing regarding US bases, but honestly, Trump, I mean, I'm in shock in a way, although it shouldn't be, but the way he just bombs them, and he's like, we need to have peace. It's this gaslighting that he does that is so Israeli. It's so Zionist. It's like, where they just like look you in the face. They're firing a missile at you and say, why are you violent? And there's like a missile coming down. It's that level of gaslighting. It's that level of gaslighting. Like where he sticks a knife in you and he's like, why do you hate me? Why are you so anti-Semitic? Here's Netanyahu, by the way. I forgot to play Mr. Milaikovsky. Forgive me. You'll look past this transgression.
Congratulations, President Trump. Your bold decision to target Iran's nuclear facilities with the awesome and righteous might of the United States will change history.
Why is he saying congratulations? It's like, we're not, congratulations, we've decided not to publish your Epstein tapes. Honestly, I've seen a lot of comments here and there about, oh, well, he must have diddled a lot of kids on Epstein Island. And honestly, that could be true. I think there's like photographs, or we've heard that he's been on the plane. Look, for me, I think you need to understand that whole political establishment is screwed up in the head. And I don't just mean because of Epstein, but because they like war. Do you understand? Like, that's their core function in power, is to keep these wars going. So it's actually even worse, because they don't even need to blackmail these people. They are, by default, by their very nature, just bloodthirsty. Do you understand? That's even worse than someone who's been blackmailed, because if they're blackmailed, it's like, well, they were pressured into doing it. No, these people are not pressured, in my opinion. I think it's maybe a mix of both, but I guarantee you, a lot of them don't need to be pressured or convinced or bullied or, coerced into doing this, Israel's bidding, or basically, I mean, it's the same thing, really. Washington and Tel Aviv, it's ridiculous. They're one entity. No one needs to coerce them. They're in politics to kill people. There is nothing else that they do. So, anyway, I'll let Netanyahu finish.
Congratulations, President Trump. Your bold decision to target Iran's nuclear facilities with the awesome and righteous might of the United States will change history. In Operation Rising Lion, Israel has done truly amazing things. But in tonight's action against Iran's nuclear facilities, America has been truly unsurpassed. It has done what no other country on earth...
Yeah, he's really getting on his knees tonight, right? The awesome might of America never surpassed. He's really laying it on quite thick today.
Unsurpassed. It has done what no other country on earth could do. History will record that President Trump acted to deny the world's most dangerous regime the world's most dangerous weapons. His leadership today has created a pivot of history that can help lead the Middle East and beyond to a future of prosperity and peace. President Trump and I often say, peace through strength. First comes strength, then comes peace. And tonight, President Trump and the United States...
Wow, that honestly, that is so deep. I think I'm going to have to meditate on it for a few days. Really let it sink in and kind of absorb that into my whole regimen. Yeah. Wow, just wise words, really. What is it? They have something in stock that's been ready to go for this event for like 20 fucking years, right? Like he's been begging them to do this for so long. You would think everything is ready to go. And he has probably one of his best speeches. This is just cheap, tacky stuff, man.
President Trump and the United States acted with a lot of strength. President Trump, I thank you. The people of Israel thank you. The forces of civilization thank you. God bless America. God bless Israel. And may God bless our unshakable alliance, our unbreakable faith.
Hey, he forgot God bless the Middle East. Isn't that what you're supposed to say after you drop a bunch of bunker busters and, Tomahawk cruise missiles? Very, very, very unkosher of him. No, I mean this is honestly just horrible. Forget the war, like the actual killing and the destruction. This is just really bad politics. I mean, who wrote this? Who wrote this crap? I feel like I've been cheated, honestly. I was expecting something a bit more, No, you couldn't even do that. So I've got a statement for you. This is from the International Atomic Energy Agency. I haven't even read it yet, but I guarantee you it's going to fall short of anything responsible or sensible. Anyway, here we go. So following attacks on 3 nuclear sites in Iran, including Fordow, the IAEA confirms that there are no increases in off-site radiation levels, so that they mean outside the facility, reported at this time. The agency will provide further assessments on the situation in Iran as more information becomes available. Well, again, as I told you half an hour ago, the concern is not just outside, it's also inside. Alpha particles you can usually block, or rather alpha rays, you would block them with a piece of paper, right? But if you walked in the facility right now in Natanz, and that was already before they bombed it this morning, just last week, after Israel struck it on June 13th, you can't go in without PPE. The level of stupidity and the gaslighting it exceeds everything that a normal person can tolerate. What a scandal. What an absolute scandal. So, and by the way, just in case I'm not being explicit enough, when the nuclear deal was in effect, you could sit in Vienna, okay, if you're the agency, you're the IAEA, and you can watch with video, and you can see, through the meters, all of the equipment that's being produced, like what centrifuges are being built, how much material is being treated, how much material is being processed. You can see everything that Iran is doing. And you can also do snap inspections. You can just walk into a facility and inspect it. Just look through everything. Like, you couldn't ask for more transparency. There is nothing else that they could have done. The Iranians, I mean. There is nothing else they could have done to be more transparent. It doesn't exist. I mean, just name it. You can't. Right? They're measuring everything. They're watching everything. And they can walk in anytime they like. What more do you want? No, let's just like bomb everything. It's about economic destruction. It's about the foreign policy. Nothing more. That's what it's always been about. So in any case, I'll show you some more destruction from Haifa. This is happening right now. This is after Iran's latest volley or salvo or yeah.
راح نص النوردو شو كل النوردو وارتسل بعد.
I think so. He is speaking Arabic, but I what did he say? Nordo, is that the name of the street? I think, and he said Herzl. I'm assuming it's the name of the street or the place. He's saying half of it is gone. Well, we can see that, yeah.
Пиздец.
That's Russian. Yeah, and I can confirm to you that. So I can confirm to you that they're reporting explosions now in not just Haifa but Tel Aviv as well. Okay, so Haifa is like the main economic hub for the Israelis, whereas Tel Aviv is the so-called capital. Yeah, still nothing on the American bases, still nothing on Hormuz, but I'm assuming that will come out throughout, that info will come out throughout the day, or as the day goes by. Let me just double check again. I keep looking and refreshing every couple of minutes, but there's nothing new about that. So give me a second. I'm just checking for latest updates if there's anything else. No, there's nothing on it. Nothing yet. I'm assuming the Iranians are probably sitting around having meetings now and deciding precisely what to do in response. That's well, obviously, militaries will have plans of action or strike packages and these kinds of things prepared, but this is something that needs to be discussed. I mean, the US entering the war, that's really. Because last week they were saying, well, it's just Israel, so we can't. They were basically indicating in so many words that they can't just go for closing straight up Hormuz. They were hinting at it, but they weren't committing to it. And so for me, I interpreted that as them being kind of reluctant to do it. And I assumed because they were waiting for a situation like this, otherwise you have no cards up your sleeve. So that's probably what they're deliberating on right now. And it's really funny when they talk about these sleeper cells and stuff, because why the fuck would you bother with having sleeper cells when you can shut down a fifth of the oil flowing to the rest of the planet? Why would you even contemplate the former? It's so dumb, it's recycled garbage. It lacks any kind of depth or reflection. It's so typical of these corporate news networks, and it just shows you they haven't evolved one bit since in 2 decades. They haven't changed one bit. They're still recycling the same talking points and garbage. Here, this is some footage from Tel Aviv that's just come in now. Okay. Yeah, and there's more footage over here that's come in. It's not it's not written or stated where this is, but nevertheless, it's from Palestine. Yeah, I think this might be from the same clip we just watched earlier. It looks like it's from the same area. Yeah. So, it's crazy, crazy, crazy stuff. And here's another video from Tel Aviv. You can see from... You know, these are sites, these are pictures, these are images, these are videos that we have, frankly, never seen, ever. And for the Israelis to be experiencing this, I think it's understandable why they closed the airport and wouldn't let them leave. And when I say understandable, I mean from a strategic point of view, because I'm guessing a lot of them would be leaving. If you have 500,000 that left in November or December, basically end of 2023 already, you can only imagine now with for the first time in history, they're actually having to face off against another army and another state actor, not a group or a non-state actor or a bunch of civilians or refugees or people that have been displaced, that are weary, that have been subject to genocide. No, this is another state actor that has, you know, scores several times the amount of territory that they do, so that you can't saturate them with missile barrages and impact them in the same way, or have the whole population running to shelters the same way, because they're spread out. And you know, that doesn't mean the Israelis aren't dealing damage to the Iranians. They bloody well are. They bloody well are. They took out 2 chiefs of staff in a week. I mean, that is beyond scandalous, honestly. And look what the US just did this morning. That's Israel's doing, you know, or Israel, America's doing, whatever. It's the same actor, right? But my point is just that from you know, the Israelis are used to kind of just walking all over or running over. I mean, you can pick whichever one describes reality better, perhaps running. Just basically plowing through other people, you know, whether they're in Syria, whether they're in Egypt. That's been their experience up until this point. And now this is the first time they have to contend with someone who is really, really well equipped, who doesn't need to rely on foreign industry or on, you know, foreign aid packages. This is homegrown, a homegrown defense industry. The Iranians make their own missiles. You know, they almost their entire defense expenditure is spent at home. They're not importing guns or missiles or planes from the United States. They're building the stuff themselves. They have the scientists to do it. They have the industry and the manufacturing to do it themselves. They have massive stockpiles. Their territory is large, and they're able to lob these missiles. You know, I don't even know what wave we're at right now. I think we're at wave 18, 19. Let me double check. I actually lost count. It's insane. But my point is just that this is a reality, not just for Israelis, but for us watching and reporting and talking about this. It's unprecedented. And having the US now enter this war is very, very dangerous. It's very, very dangerous. So just give me a second. I want to check what number of yeah, it's the 19th wave, okay? It's the 19th wave. I think might even be 20th if you count the drones as well from earlier. So 19th or 20th. You know, this is in the first hours of June 13th. I was live here with you guys, and I was telling you, if it looks like True Promise 1 or True Promise 2, you can forget about it. Iran is cooked. And you know, then we saw the barrages coming, and then they wouldn't stop. And now we can definitively say that this looks nothing like True Promise 1 or True Promise 2. This is really like, it's really a full-blown, full-scale war. And obviously, when we talk about all-out war in the region, that's going to involve Aramco and hitting oil targets and gas targets, not just like what we've seen in the last week with Haifa and, you know, these oil refineries in Tehran and Tabriz and so on. No. I'm talking about in Saudi Arabia, in the UAE, in, you know, that obviously in that scenario it will be even worse, because that's going to impact the price of oil. As a matter of fact, I haven't even checked it this morning. I should have done that. 1 second. But no matter what it is right now, it will be way worse if the Strait of Hormuz is closed and if Aramco and those other oil giants like Saudi Arabia and so on get hit. Okay, today it will be nothing like that future, pun intended. So let me just check the latest price of it actually, because the other day it spiked like 4%. It wasn't really that bad. Right now, if they'll actually, I don't even see it mentioned in the news, so it kind of, couldn't have gone up that much. Yeah, so for example, just as 2 days ago, okay, so not this morning, 2 days ago, it's up 3%. It's not really significant, yeah. So it was the highest since January, but it's not that crazy. 78 a barrel, yeah. But they're saying, so this is JP Morgan saying that if the Strait of Hormuz gets closed, as I just told you a few seconds ago, it will be much worse. It wouldn't be $78 a barrel. It would be $120 or $130 a barrel. So almost double. Yeah, that makes a lot more sense. Do you remember, by the way, during COVID when it was like, what was it, minus 37? You would get paid to offload the barrels from them, right? It's just wild. And because the demurrage fines and the storage, it will murder you. So it's actually cheaper just to pay someone to take the oil in that case. But the Iranians, I can tell you, they have 10 million barrels of oil in their reserves. These are not strategic reserves. These are in stock because of the nuclear deal, because of Trump, because of Israel, because they sanctioned Iran. And Iran can't offload the oil fast enough. It's got too much oil, Obviously, they made a deal like a strategic partnership with China, where they will get they will receive infrastructure from China in exchange for oil, but it's nowhere near enough to actually get rid of all of these massive reserves. Now, it's not a bad thing to have. These are good problems to have, obviously. But I think they would much rather be able to just sell the oil and not be sanctioned, right? And that's why they were so adamant on getting back, or rather getting the Americans back, I should say, into that agreement. But everything is related to what's happening. That's kind of my point. So yeah, we'll wait to see. I think honestly that if they wait any longer, they can expect to see those nuclear sites hit again. I mean, if you ask me, the Americans and Israelis are looking at this right now and they're saying, yes, okay, Israel's taking a pounding, but the American bases haven't been touched. World economies is more or less okay. So again, when I was saying earlier that Iran is between a rock and a hard place, they really are, because they've got to decide now between just, being pulverized or taking this to the next level. And then of course everyone is going to blame them. Everyone's going to blame them as if they're the ones that started the war, which is ridiculous. It's not their fault that the Israelis and Americans came and bombed their nuclear facilities and forced them to hit back at American bases. But they'll frame it like that. I can guarantee you turn on Fox News, they're going to be like, oh my God, look at our poor service members being hit by these evil mullah, these turban wearing mullahs. You know that's what they're going to say. They will. I'm surprised. I'm pleasantly surprised when they even say the verb that Iran is reacting or responding, which gets the timeline correct, that Israel started the war or America started the war. So that by itself is like a huge improvement in terms of how dishonest, or rather how honest they are, because they're so dishonest usually. But honestly, most of the time, they're still going to have that framing. And even right now, they're trying to accuse or paint Iran like it's doing a million things. They can't even talk accurately about the nuclear issue. So what do you think is going to happen when the world economy tanks, or there's oil being cut off? You'll have Lindsey Graham or Ted Cruz going on Fox or something and being like, they just want to hurt our way of life because they hate our freedoms. And so it's like fucking George Bush all over again. You already know that they're going to do this. So the Iranians are really between a rock and a hard place. They're damned if they do and damned if they don't. So I wouldn't want to be in their shoes right now, honestly. I really would not. This is more footage coming out of Tel Aviv right now as we speak. I mean, that is absolutely insane. What the hell? That is absolutely insane. Here, there's more footage. I don't know what this target is. No one seems to know what it is. It's.
عم بفضل اني ماشي هسه سنت لك فوق هاي البنيان وهذا البنيان وفي 5 6 بنيانين طلع هذا بتقدر تكيم الصوت كيمو راح يلا كله عجم كني رمتها في هاي البنيان.
Look at that building. I mean, that is shocking. That doesn't look like honestly, it doesn't look like the safest place in the world for Jews, does it? Which is the tagline or the you know, the slogan that Israelis constantly promote about Israel. They're trying to make it out to be like you know, it's a land of milk and honey. It's really not. I mean, and the fact that they are not letting people leave right now is bloody insane. I mean, they got the nerve to talk about human shields then. Anyway, look, let me read some of your comments or questions, and I'll answer your questions to you. And again, if you're watching right now, make sure you've hit the like button. I forgot to ask for that, or remind you to do it earlier. But we've got 8,000 people watching, so I want to see 8,000 likes. And don't try to short me. And thanks to all of you for donating, for supporting my work, for supporting independent journalism. And if you're new here, well, subscribe. And if you're not, make sure you're subscribed, because some people get unsubscribed. I see that in the comments sometimes. I don't know if YouTube is doing that or whatever, but we've got Tom who joined on Patreon. Thank you, Tom. And we've got Yassi, Crab Dance incoming, impending. And we've got a couple of things on PayPal. I'm going to read them to you or answer them as best as I can. And again, thank you to everyone who's donating and supporting my work, especially in this kind of shitty time. And I'm not talking about the war or the news. I mean, like, my situation with these legal cases. We've got, yeah, so Hussein says, thank you for all your hard work and bravery. Best wishes. Thank you. And we've got another one over here. This is from Mustafa. Says, hey, Richard, thank you for your hard work and journalism. As I said last time, and I'm very happy to see you back, as is everyone else, I'm sure. Thank you. I don't really have anything else to say. Just wanted to help out a little. Well, I appreciate it nonetheless. Thank you. And I've been reading your comments. I mean, not just yours, but everyone else's as well. And I'm grateful for that. We have another one over here. This is from Catherine. Thank you very much, Catherine. Says independent journalism. And there are a few more that aren't loading, but I'll play Crab Dance for you guys. And, you know, just to say thank you. And I'll check for more news if there's anything coming in right now on my desk. Here we go.
Corn Pop was a bad dude, and he ran a bunch of bad boys.
Listen, fuckhead, you fucking crossed the line, claiming I'm the enemy. You got that, you goddamn son of a bitch?
I don't give a fuck what you think, bitch.
Good morning. Sunday morning.
Cut that bitch off.
Thank you for Iron Dome.
Thank you. والله انتوا كلاب بصراحة يعني. ماشي نشتغل عادي.
We lied, we cheated, we stole.
China.
And you ain't black.
There's always the macro.
And then there's the micro.
Do not come. Do not come.
I'm gonna come.
You talking to me?
Ladies and gentlemen,
I'll have 2 number 9s, a number 9 large.
we got him.
Because I have to do it myself. I know it's not.
I've fallen and I can't get up.
Oh!
Disgusting!
She was 12, I was 30, but anyway. We'll do it live! Fuck it! Do it live! I'll write it and we'll do it live!
Why you text in?
Why? You're getting nervous, man. Calm down. It's okay. Okay.
Suck my dick and choke on it. I yield my time. Fuck you.
Absolutely wild, man. Absolutely wild stuff, I swear. It's good to see the crowd dance. It really is. There's more footage I'm going to play for you from Tel Aviv in just a second. And I just want to say thank you to Musashi for joining on Patreon. And thank you to Light for your donation. I don't see any comments, but thank you nevertheless. So this is from Devin. Devin says, "Hey Richard, how are you doing? We always got your back." Thank you, Devin. Much appreciated, much obliged. This is a new clip that we haven't seen yet. You can see the rescue workers kind of milling in Tel Aviv. Yeah, so look at that. It's just wild. There's one bit of news from Hormuz that I want to show you. And this was, I think it was published by Press TV earlier, but here you can see you've got, so they were pointing out that there are 50 oil tankers, large oil tankers, trying to leave the Strait of Hormuz right now. So they probably gathered that there's a shitstorm incoming and they're trying to bugger off right now. So I don't know if you guys grasp or you've seen the Strait of Hormuz before and understand its economic significance. I mean, I've raised this literally since day one. I think, yeah, back in October 2023, I did those mini documentaries about what was actually driving the Israeli genocide in Gaza. It wasn't just racism or Jewish supremacism and white supremacism and colonialism. No, it was. There's also an economic incentive to it. There's a long-standing policy of, we want to control the Middle East and we want to control its resources. But what specifically? Which resources? So here I'll go on Google Maps and kind of show you very, very briefly. This is between Oman and Iran. Okay, it's a choke point. It's a very, very narrow shipping lane, and so there's Iran. Okay, and this is the Strait of Hormuz. It's right there. This bump over here above the UAE, and yeah. So UAE is there and Oman is there. It's basically. It basically goes past both. But anyway, I mean, Oman, you should also know that Oman has quite different foreign policy from the UAE and Qatar and Bahrain and Saudi Arabia. So, the GCC guys, yeah, it's not the same as Oman and Yemen. They have different foreign policies. And then even Yemen is split with, two governments. I mean, we all know which is the real one. So this is the Strait of Hormuz, okay? This part here, and you can't even. By the way, you can't even sail or ship oil and tankers through the entire span of this, right? Don't think that that it looks small, but it's actually wide. No. The shipping lane is much smaller than what you're seeing, and the same applies to the Bab el-Mandeb Strait over here. Jesus, I mean this one's even worse, right? That is a really tight space to squeeze through. It's a real choke point, and the same thing applies, of course, to the Suez Canal. In terms, when I say the same thing applies, of course, I'm talking about the economic importance, strategic importance of it. That's one of the reasons why the Israelis and Americans wanted to build their own canal, the Ben Gurion Canal, and that one would go, of course, through Gaza, right? It would go through Gaza because that's the shortest distance. And they had a plan to put a bunch of nuclear bombs there, 530 nuclear bombs. And then you have the Strait of Gibraltar over here. So really, I mean, aside from the Panama Canal, okay, put the Panama Canal aside, the main shipping lanes, they all go through Arab countries. And that's really what drives the Western world to want to control this region, because it's about the shipping lanes. And, of course, the oil. But, the oil is an easy one. Everyone talks about the oil. Shipping lane involves everything, right? Most of the world economy goes through these shipping lanes, right? Or at least a significant part of it does. I mean, certainly in terms of oil, but again, remember China, for example, when they're shipping things, no one, this is not the 17th or 16th century. No one goes around Africa anymore down past Cape Town, unless, of course, Yemen have, implementing their blockade, in which case you literally had to. And that incurs massive fines, demurrage fines, and of course increases shipping time and shipping costs. So it is a nightmare, to have to go back to sailing like it's, you're 300 years in the past. But nevertheless, it's very, very, very important to control these countries, not just for their oil supply, but mainly for their shipping lanes. At least in my opinion. Okay, that's not something they're going to openly admit to you, but they will kind of hint at it a lot of the times, especially people like Lindsey Graham and neoconservatives and Republicans. Sometimes they're a bit more loose-lipped, or they kind of let things slip a bit more than Democrats would. But they all hint at it, and they all kind of they give the plot away. But yeah, that's really what it's about. That's really the main issue. And Yemen kind of stepped up where Egypt was supposed to shut the canal, like when Nasser nationalized it in 56. And again, what did they do? What was the response in 56? The Israelis, the French, the UK attacked Egypt because they dared to nationalize the canal. So Egypt had to be tamed, become a eunuch, neutered. And that's what it is today as a state. I mean, as a country, it's neutered. Been taken care of, has ties with Israel, will never shut the Suez Canal, not a threat, not going to receive any pushback from them. So you see, this is a long-term strategy. And Iran, of course, they used to have control of it. They don't anymore, and Iran needs to be tamed. Iran is too big, it's got too much oil, too much gas. Like I said, it's one of the top 5. So after Russia has the #1 gas reserves on the planet. After Russia, it's Iran. In terms of gas, they've got the second largest reserves, or rather, I should say proven gas reserves, because, they're always discovering new reserves and basins everywhere. But in terms of proven natural gas reserves, it's Russia, then Iran, and they need to be tamed. So that's what it's about. And, in terms of oil, of course, they're one of the top 10 exporters and an OPEC member. So many, many reasons, right? And of course, not to mention the fact that they have a foreign policy that's anti-Zionist and against Western imperialism. So these are really the main issues behind the war that is taking place this second, that was started today, that started really decades ago, to be honest. But, let's just try and frame it in the context of Trump's strikes, since that's the breaking news. That is really what's driving this. It's nothing to do with the nuclear program. Okay? Just to be very, very clear, very explicit on that, because we need to begin and we need to finish on that note. You need to understand why this war is happening. Nothing to do with nuclear program. I can attest to that, right? Because I know that topic very well, but I also know the Middle East very well. So and I'm telling you that, and I know Iran very well in this whole region. So I'm telling you that what drives this urge to send bombers around the planet and invest all this money and spend all that money on, propping up the Israeli colony, on making sure that everyone shuts the fuck up, that even in the West you can't open your mouth about this stuff. It's because of these economic and political interests, regarding this region. It's because of the shipping lanes, because of the oil, because these interests are so significant to so many actors and so many multinationals and so many corporations and to Wall Street that they supersede everything else. There is nothing that comes that is more, that is more sacred or more important than these interests. Everything else, nothing takes precedence. Not international law, not religion, not anything, no morality. No, it's the money. That's the bottom line. Literally and pun intended too. So anyway, I think we'll end on that note. Bar any, of course, if there's any new news coming in or additional news coming in, but I don't see anything for now. So I'll go live as soon as we have more information and there's more developments. But again, thank you all for tuning in. Please support the show by liking it, by sharing it, by commenting. That helps fight the algorithm. And of course, if you can donate on PayPal, GoFundMe, or on Patreon, it's much, much, much